Hey everyone, and welcome to Rambling Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is Spirited, starring Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds, written by Sean Anders, John Morris, and technically Charles Dickens, as well as directed by Sean Anders as well. Now, this film really caught me off guard. I love A Christmas Carol. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. I love A Christmas Carol. I'm more indifferent to musicals, which this very much is, and it's also in a way a raunchy comedy. In fact, the directors and writers for this movie primarily worked on things before like Sex Drive, Horrible Bosses, and That's My Boy, the movie with Adam Sandler. So again, a lot of those kind of like 90s 2000s very raunchy kind of comedies, which I very much miss and wish they kind of came back you know again, as it were. There was this kind of surgence of them throughout the 2000s, which I personally wasn't allowed to partake in because of just my upbringing, and my mother was very like prudish and not didn't allow me to experience any of that stuff. So as I got older, of course I got into things like that. Same thing with like American Pie and like all those different things, right? But This film, something that I find very interesting, and we're going to see with this film, a lot of raunchy comedies very much have heart to them. So like, yeah, they have like these kind of let's be honest, your kind of high school or college level humor as far as things like sex jokes and relatively um, frequent swearing and things of that nature. But I would say that this one actually kind of airs a lot less on the side of those kinds of things, and is just kind of, I would say, a modern take and continuation in many ways of A Christmas Carol, with a bit more of an edge, a bit more of a bite, if you will. And we're going to get to that as we go through the film here. So without further ado, let's get into it. We open with the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and yet to come, having just completed a hopefully successful haunt, as what it turns out is essentially, once Ebenezer Scrooge was successfully haunted and was able to kind of rehabilitate himself and things of that nature, the ghosts kind of started making it a bit of a kind of like an office business where they like find clients to haunt and to like change and turn into better people and things of that nature. And I think that's a really interesting take on these characters, and we'll get into that more as we continue on here. The spirits are played by, in order as past, present, and yet to come, are played by Sunita. Forgive my pronunciation here. Sunita Mani, Will Ferrell, and Lauren G. Woods does the body for, like, he plays the character of Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, but the voice is provided by Tracy Morgan. And, it's kind of like a Darth Vader type of thing where there was one guy that did the body. I don't remember who he is off the top of my head, but then James Earl Jones did the actual voice for Darth Vader. It's that kind of vibe. And I think that kind of thing is a very interesting way to go about it. But one of the things that I want to mention here, especially with Tracy being the character and doing the voice of Christmas Future, is that there's this running joke where essentially these guys have all been at the game for a while, and essentially he's kind of telling the guys, he's like, hey, why don't I try a new catchphrase? Why don't I do something new? Just wanting to kind of spice things up and everything. Everyone really does just kind of treat this as a job, which not a job in which people are not appreciating or anything like that. But we see that essentially the whole thing has been turned into, like I said, very much kind of an office space, as we see Jacob Marley, yes, the Jacob Marley that originally haunted Scrooge, the first one that appeared to Scrooge in the original Christmas Carol. That's something a lot of people get confused, by the way. Scrooge was haunted by four ghosts, not three, because you got to include Jacob Marley. And we have Jacob Marley here played by... Okay, I am very confused here. I thought that I thought it was Patrick Stewart who was playing Jacob Marley here, but apparently it's someone named Patrick Page. This is one of the main things he's known for, apparently. So I guess he's kind of more, up and coming, as it were. But either way, the whole thing is kind of, like I said, turned into an office, and but everyone has fun. I mean, we have these whole moments where, and like I said, this is a musical, but basically, we have this bit here where everyone after the haunt is done, and they're reviewing their most recent client, seeing if the character, who is just simply named Miss Blansky, has actually changed and become a better person. Basically, these kids are out here inviting her to play, and she even mentions to them, she's like, really? Like, I did such horrible things to you guys. I called the HOA on you guys and the police and all these different things, and you guys still want me to like have fun with you guys on Christmas. And so, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole spirit of Christmas and everything. So she joins them because, she's essentially showing that she has in fact changed. And we have this moment where all of the characters effectively, we have Marley, we have Christmas Present, Yet to Come, and Past, all kind of joining her as time stops. And we have basically most of the ensemble cast kind of in the background here, congratulating her for being a better person, and that she's moved forward, essentially. And then we have our first musical number entitled That Christmas Morning Feeling. Now, I do want to take a moment here to mention, as I said, this is in fact a musical, and the songs for the musical were primarily written by a Benge, I believe it's pronounced B-E-N-G, Pesek, P-A-S-E-K, and Justin Paul. Again, forgive my pronunciation here, but I believe it's pronounced Benge Pesek and Justin Paul. And I kind of mentioned this before, but I'm not really the biggest fan of musicals. Musicals aren't like a go-to for me or anything. I don't have anything against musicals. It's just that they're not something I've never gone out of my way. I'm like, oh, because this is a musical, I have to see it. But I'm also not the type where I'm like, oh, I refuse to see that because it's a musical. I'm more or less indifferent to them, I would say. But one thing that I want to say is the musicals in this film are, I mean, first of all, as with anything, right, they communicate things about the characters and things of that nature, and they show off so much talent from, all of the extras and everything. We have all these moments, for example, where we see, these tap dancers and these, kind of gymnastic performances people are doing, and all kind of just, really crazy things and talent, and it's a really good, big production as far as all that's concerned. But basically, it's, of course, this is kind of their introduction and everything, and it's kind of their way of explaining both primarily to the audience, of course, who they are and everything, as these types of things tend to go. But we have this moment where essentially we see that while everybody's having fun celebrating their most recent client that they've saved, for lack of a better word, that they've helped to change and turn over a new leaf and everything, we have Ghost of Christmas Present, which, by the way, I'm just going to be referring to them as past, present, and future from this point on. But we have Present go into this kind of hall where all of these statues are made to commemorate the people that they've saved over the years, these people that they've helped, become better people. And another character is discussing with him his potential retirement, and he's essentially just kind of lamenting over and wondering what kind of life he could have if he does retire, because what we find out later is that when these characters retire, they basically had a chance to live a new life. They get a second lease on life. I don't know if they get a third one or anything like that, if that happens. But we have these moments where he's essentially just kind of going through, looking at kind of the world in general, seeing all the negativity. We have this moment where he's kind of seeing what seems to be all these tweets and comments on TikTok or something, just all this hate and negativity, and just wanting to change it and make it better, wanting to stay and just do what he can to make everything better for everyone, which is, of course, a very commendable thing. And we see that even they've worked with people like Dolly Parton, Jules Burian. I'm not sure who that is, but we do see characters like that as well here. And I mean, essentially we have this whole thing where these guys, they've been at this for a long time. Ever since Scrooge, they've been, I want to say, making a business, except they're not like being paid or anything, but they've turned this into a whole thing where they are going out of their way to find people who are, really in need of redeeming, who are just like absolutely terrible people. We're talking like shitty, landlords. We're talking CEOs. We're talking, just all these kind of grubby, money hungry people that are stepping over the downtrodden and, stuff like that. And like Scrooge, and just really trying to change them and help make them better people. And as they enter into, this building, they're at first going to work with this guy who's, he's at this hotel and he's just very demanding, and he's being a dick to like the bellhop and everything. And yes, that's all terrible. But then we see them go into this meeting, and we see the introduction of Clint Briggs, played, of course, by Ryan Reynolds. And Clint's whole thing here is he's essentially a really shady businessman. He's working with this company, National Association Christmas Tree, where essentially what they're doing is they are trying to, they need to sell regular Christmas trees, right? The National Association of Christmas Tree Growers. And essentially, he has this whole thing where he's talking about everyone wants to use these plastic trees because they're convenient and all these different things. And he talks about, all of this. And this is honestly really like biting and topical commentary, I feel, because his whole thing is basically, look, in order to get people to buy these trees, buy your trees, your natural grown trees, you don't need to just make it about the trees. You need to make it about something so much more. He says, people are lazy, but they're also desperate to seem good, smart, and right. So basically what he's talking about is turning natural trees versus plastic trees into a culture war issue. And he even says, like, look, you're not just selling trees. You're selling, like, the old-fashioned American spirit and family and all these different things, whereas, these plastic trees represent, well, all the things against that, essentially, right? And you do, and this works. We've seen companies and people do this kind of thing where, they'll turn relatively benign things into, some kind of culture war issue, and they get rich off of everybody fighting over it. And we see that it works. Later, we'll see people actually fighting over this and properly turning it into a culture war issue, and that drives people to say, all right, well, if I want to be like an old fashioned, like, good, American Christmas person, whatever, right? Then I'm gonna buy the artificial tree, of course, the natural tree. Of course, artificial tree you get to put up year after year. You don't have to buy a new one all the time. You don't have to deal with keeping it, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, safe. You have to put, I've never had a real tree. Growing up, I was definitely one of those people who would want a real tree, but never actually got one. And looking back on it, I'm really glad that I never got a real tree. Now I use a plastic tree myself because, like, fuck that shit. But, you have this whole thing where this guy has just turned the whole thing into a culture war issue. And we see that kind of thing with so many things, with entertainment and with products in general, where the reality is these companies don't care about like what's right or wrong or anything. They just want to make money, and they're just going to do and sell you whatever they need to, sell you the narrative they need to, in order to get you to buy their product. And that's what it's all about. It's about buying their product, not about anything that you stand for, anything that they stand for, anything like that. That's all just bullshit they're throwing at you to, make you more compelled to buy their product. But we now have this moment where Present is trying to convince everybody our client this year needs to be Briggs. He is just the scum of the earth, and he has incredible reach with a wide audience. But everybody says we're not going to be able to help him because he is unredeemable. And essentially, what that comes down to is this idea that there are certain people, certain characters, certain people that exist who are just beyond redemption. Now, this is something that the film itself is going to explore as we continue on, but personally, I don't believe that anybody is beyond redemption. I believe no matter the things that you've done in your life, I believe everybody is capable of redemption and rehabilitation and becoming a good person. I believe there are very few types of things, unless you've been like, I don't know, a sadistic murder, sadistic serial killer or something like that. I don't really see much else that would make you actually unredeemable, actually somebody who could not, become a better person. I don't see, and this is something that essentially we see Will's character Present challenging throughout the whole film here. We have this moment where they're telling him he's not going to do it and everything. We're not going to do it, and so Present tells Marley, "All right, look, tell you what, if we don't do this, I'm out. I'm gonna take my retirement right now." And Marley calls his bluff, and we have this moment where we see the retirement is this kind of looks like kind of a watch on a chain, like a chain watch kind of thing that you would. It's got this like mystical thing going on, and it's a cool little effect. It doesn't really mean anything as far as like the plot goes or anything, but it's an interesting little effect, I think. But of course, yes, he's essentially bluffing, but he's explaining that that like we have this little song number as well here, where, and it's really funny because he kind of wins them over with this song. And this is one of the funny moments because it's very meta where Present is trying to win Marley over through song and basically saying that like if we can change it, we can change this guy's life, make him a better person, and it'll be this like ripple effect that'll just go and affect more and more people and everything. And Marley's like, all right, fine, I'll let you do it, but only if you stop singing. And he's and so it's a nice little kind of meta moment with that. And of course this is a comedy, and look, I'm not going to be going through and like pointing out every joke that we see or anything like that, but I do just of course want to point out some of the things like that broadly as we go through this. In general though, I just this is one of those things that I highly recommend you watch yourself because it's a very very good film. We have yet another musical number. We have the spirits, getting to work with everything. And finally, we have the spirits doing reconnaissance on Briggs, as we also have the introduction of his assistant, Kimberly, played by Octavia Spencer. Now, essentially what we have here, so here we see just more and more what a piece of shit Briggs is. He runs this essentially multimedia company, right? And we have this whole thing where from the jump we're seeing that Kimberly and him are talking about how there's this beef between Ed Sheeran and Billie Eilish, and how he's instructed essentially or had an apology ready to go for Ed Sheeran to go the day of the VMAs in order to maximize publicity. And Kimberly then mentions about, oh, your niece is here. And we have this moment where immediately I wanted to call him Ben. It's not Ben Briggs. It's Clint Briggs. So Clint's immediately like, oh, well, did she get the phone I sent? And she's like, Yes. Did he get the, all these other different presents that he's sent? And she's like, well, yeah, but she wants to see you. And it's like, yeah, but I'm really busy. To which Kimberly's like, all right, no worries. I'll just tell your late sister's only kid that you're too busy. At which point Clint is, we will find out later why the way she emphasized late is so important, but he says that was a good guilt trip, and we'll find out why later. Essentially, what we have here is that his niece, Ren, is meeting with him because she wants advice on how to go about putting a campaign together as she's running for the student council president for her school. And she's going up against this guy by the name of Josh, who's essentially this just like incredible like guy who is just like perfect. I mean, he gets like these incredible grades, all these different things. At first Clint's like, okay, look, I don't really care. Like, I'm not, he's really just kind of brushing her off and everything. But we have Clint's older brother, who's essentially Ren's caregiver, Owen, explaining, he's like, listen, you remember when Carrie asked you, Carrie being their sister, if Ren ever needed anything, you'd help her. And once again, we're seeing also right here that something about Carrie being, Carrie, Clint's sister, is very important to him. He really does care about her. She might even be the only person he cares about, and we'll see that as we continue on here. But, with this, Clint's immediately like, all right, tell you what, I'll help you out. And he's asking questions about Josh and everything, and what he's trying to do, of course, is he says, right, when hearing essentially how perfect Josh seems to be, we can find dirt on the guy. Everybody's got skeletons on their closet. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's got something. Kimberly is like amazing at this. I'm gonna put Kimberly on this, and so he does. And basically, Josh works. He volunteers at a homeless shelter. And when he first started working at the homeless shelter, it was more of a punishment. So he posted this TikTok where, he says here, when your parents make you eat Christmas dinner with homeless people, right? And he says it's gross and very, very, dismissing and everything, right? And Kimberly's immediately like, oh, I got you. Like, that's, I got some dirt on you. And then she's like, what the hell am I doing? I'm digging up dirt on a kid. Like, what am I doing? This all leads into another musical number. And I'm going to be honest with you, it made me tear up. Like, there are some moments in this film in general that as I was watching, I was like, God damn, like, that got me in the heart. Because you have this whole moment, and it's really cool because we have these shots here where Present is watching the whole thing. And he's watching her as she has these conflicted emotions and everything, and she's, wrestling with everything that she's dealing with here in regards to really her entire job in the first place. I mean, these guys are the kind of people that have dug up all kind of dirt on politicians and celebrities and all these different things, and have just tarnished people's reputation in order to further the career or political prospects or whatever it might be of their client. But now, she's at a point where she's like, I think this is crossing the line. This is too far. And we have this big triumphant moment as she walks up to Clint with Present cheering her on from the background. And as she's about to tell him, we see Present just, like I said, really cheering her on and everything. And he's like, yes, like, you can do it. And she tells Clint, I think I found something that's, I think I found some dirt on the kid. Which, of course, immediately, understandably and rightfully so, deflates Present. And once Kimberly shows it to them, of course, Clint's extremely impressed, and he tells Ren, he's like, tell you what, once he's done posting about his annual good deed, you go ahead and send that out, it'll tarnish his reputation. And then you just got to start writing your acceptance speech, and you've won. Owen, the one that's, kind of looking after her and everything, is, kind of stepping in and trying to be like, well, hang on, can we, this is just a kid, like, can we talk about this and everything? And as they're leaving, Kimberly says to herself, out loud, mind you, it's official, I'm a terrible person. At which point, President says, no, you're not. And then we have this moment where she sees him. Now, she can't see past or future, but she can see present just fine. And we have this pretty funny interaction where she's asking like, "Oh, do I know you?" and everything. He's like, "No, I'm new. I'm from out of town. All these different things, right?" And we have this moment where Future's like, "All right, now we gotta kill her." And he's like, and she's like, "You work for Briggs? Like, what do you do?" And he's so of course Kimberly asks him like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he's, "Oh, I'm on a project." And he says, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm the ghost of Christmas present." And this whole time we have we have past and future freaking out. They're like, "What are you doing? Get out of this!" All these different things. Future's like, "We gotta kill her." All this different stuff. And Kimberly, of course, laughs, thinking he's joking. She introduces herself, of course, as Kimberly, and this is a kind of little in joke. Originally, Present introduced himself in the film as Chris Pratt. He's like, obviously he's not actually Chris Pratt, but so he introduces himself to her as Roberto C. Fisherman Pratt. Very fake name, very odd name, but it is very much, of course, that's the point. And she thinks it's funny and everything, and we have this whole moment where it's very interesting because we've never, so I mentioned how like I love A Christmas Carol, like it's my favorite Christmas story, and this is such a interesting, unique take on it. Most times, even when A Christmas Carol is adapted, it's done so in such a way where it's just about what is it called? Like, they'll set it in like the modern times or something, but they won't really do anything new with this. In this case, they're doing a lot of new stuff with this. For one, we're seeing that a person who exists that is not the client in this case can see one of the ghosts. Now, she can't see all of them, but she can at least see she can see present. And with a laugh, Kimberly leaves as past immediately calls out present and is like, "You're into her. You're totally into her. That's you might have even let her let her see you." And of course, Preston was like, "I have no idea how this happened," but they're all just going to roll with the punches at this point. Meanwhile, we cut back to Briggs in a way, and we see that the culture war with the trees has taken off, as we have Jimmy Fallon explaining that the whole thing has become a culture war over social media where, as he says, apparently if you have a real tree, you're an elitist hipster, but if you have a fake tree, you're an enemy of Santa Claus. I was going to say Jim Carrey. Jesus Christ and Mariah Carey. I got like all kind of things mixed up there. And and this is one of those things where we're seeing we see this kind of thing happen in real life too, where different movies that you might see or might a video game you might want to play, or God, even there was a whole thing over Bud Light a while ago because Bud Light dared to have Dylan Mulvaney as the spokesperson for one commercial, and put her on these cans and some shit, and like we see companies do this like culture war stuff to get your money from these from people in such a disingenuous way, because again, like people like Briggs, for example, he doesn't care. He doesn't care, and obviously the companies don't care. It's all about the money. But we have this whole moment here where Briggs, I keep wanting to refer to him as Ryan, by the way, because Ryan Reynolds is one of those characters where it's funny and everything as he is. Many people, people pointed this out, and it's very true. He's one of those actors who very much plays the same person all the time. I have no problem with it. Like, I love his humor and his quick-wittedness and everything, and like I try to implement some of that myself. But he's very like, it's just Ryan is once again essentially playing himself. So if I do slip up and call him Ryan, I apologize, but I do mean Briggs or Clint. But we have this moment where he's visited, of course, by first Jacob Marley. Now, it doesn't really make much sense when you think about it as to why Marley would visit him, considering the fact that Marley has no relation to Clint, right? When it came to Scrooge, the reason it was Marley that visited Scrooge was because Marley was his old business partner, and his whole thing was, look, I was a piece of shit and a greedy, like, just asshole like you, and I am suffering in eternity because of it. You need to like change shit, otherwise you're gonna end up just like me. So it would make more sense, and I was kind of expecting originally for someone who is personal to Briggs to show up and be his ghost of Christmas past, or excuse me, the ghost that warns him about the other ghosts that are coming. But we don't have that, and I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I think it also kind of speaks to how this has become like a formulaic thing for the ghosts, that they just haunt different people and try to make them better, and they just have the same four people like all the time. But we have this really funny moment where we have this interesting musical number where Marley's of course doing the whole like explaining everything about all these ghosts are going to come to you, and Clint's just kind of he's being like you or me might be in modern times, certainly me, where you look at this and you're like, all right, hold up, wait a minute. You mean like a Christmas Carol? I'm being Christmas like I'm like in a Christmas Carol type of thing, and he's like, yes, the whole thing, the whole, and Clint is just like stopping him in the middle of his songs, and we have just a very defeated Marley. It's like, what do you want now? What's your question? What is it? What's going on? And Clint, he asks him understandably. He's like, look, all right, out of all the horrible people, me, you're gonna pick me out of like racists, murderers, like all these awful people, you're going to pick me. Like, why me, right? So Marley's like, all right, you know what? Forget it. Don't worry about it. You're going to be visited by three ghosts that are coming to save you. Maybe you're going to pay a little bit more consideration to them rather than you did me, huh? And we have this moment where we just cut to Marley walking down the stairs, and we see the other ghosts, and he's like, I'm telling you, guys, a level 20 pain in the ass. And I love this moment because we're seeing like, you see like the extras who are other employees, well, not extras, more ensemble cast members who are other employees, of course, that are holding his chains and everything as he walks down, because the whole thing is like, again, it's a business, it's a production thing and all this, but you know how this whole thing goes, right? We of course next have the Ghost of Christmas Past. And Past had mentioned before, when they were like going over Briggs's profile, that like, this guy's really hot. She's really into him. So again, like I say, we're really playing with expectations here. We have the two of them kind of flirting for a bit, and essentially we have this moment where we cut back and we see. So first of all, we have this really funny scene where back in essentially, I'd say one of the offices, so to speak, Future is talking to President, and he's like, look, I'm always quiet, I'm always silent, all I do is stand there and point. He's like, yeah, but you're so good at it. He's like, yeah, but I want to do some like, a catchphrase. What about like, you've been Christmas Carol, bitch, or something like that, right? And all these different things. And while these two are discussing this and having their meeting, we have what I think is one of the funniest twists, where Past shows up and she tells them, she's like, look, I fucked him. She's like, we went back to his past. We were in his childhood home, on his on his twin bed, and one thing led to another, and she's like, I couldn't resist him. And at this point, President is like, oh my god, I guess I have to take care of this myself. And so again, like, we're really playing with expectations here. And one of these things I just want to point out real quick, as with many things, it is very funny and endearing that we do see Past being so thirsty for I want to say Ryan again, or Ryan's character, but Clint, being so thirsty for Clint, as she is throughout really kind of the entire film, although this is like the height of it, if you will. But you know, I want to, I don't know, I want to just kind of, mm, I want to just kind of touch on this because a lot of people get up in arms over what they call objectification or whatever, and a lot of people I'm sure that would have no problem with this, with it being the woman. If it was the other way around, would be like, oh, it's so misogynistic or whatever. And like, just to set the record straight on that real quick, this is funny, like regardless of who this is and the dynamic and things of that nature. First of all, it's funny. It's a nice twist and things like that. And also, this is just like I talk about this kind of thing like all the time, even outside of the rambling reviews. But like, there's nothing wrong with people being attracted to each other and hooking up and doing something like this in the context of like a film or whatever. These things, like, they're fine. Whether it was the man pursuing the woman pursuing the man, whatever the case, like a gay or lesbian relationship, trans, non-binary, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, this is funny. This is funny, and in this case, this is, like I said, a good, interesting twist. But speaking of these twists, so because she couldn't do this, we have Present taking over, and Present is just completely out of his element, and as he shows up, he's trying to get a lay of the land and everything, and essentially we're in when Clint was like 8 years old. And we see here why Carrie is so important to Clint, because we have this moment where he gets a dog bowl for a dog. And as he's, for Christmas, and as he's going to see his new dog that his mom says I got him, she's like, oh, you guys, you can't leave the door open like this. It lets all the heat out, and apparently a dog too. And Clint just breaks down and starts crying, to which Carrie, his sister, steps in, consoles him, and calls her out on her bullshit, where he's like, no, Clint, there is no puppy. She got you the dog bowl to make you think there was a puppy, but there's no puppy. And we see, of course, the mother has a drink in her hand and things like that. Clearly, she's some kind of, abusive alcoholic. She's very, dishonest with her kid, clearly. And, we have this whole moment where, Clint, of course, is running out after it and everything. And, Clint kind of justifies this as he explains to Preston. He's like, you know what, you're wrong. This isn't, because just like many of us, like, he knows the story of A Christmas Carol, and he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, this isn't a sad story, because actually, what this is, this taught me a very important lesson, that you can't trust anybody except yourself. And of course, Present is like, what the hell, man? Like, what are you talking about, right? But and here we're introduced to what seems to be, I wanted to call him Jim. It's not Jim. It's not Jim Briggs. Clint. Clint is such a, I don't know. Clint is such a weird name to me. I keep thinking, like, it's just not a name I think of. You know what I mean? Like, Clint. Like, it's just not a, it's a name that, like, it doesn't feel, I don't want to say like it doesn't feel like a real name, but it's kind of like, I wouldn't think of, if I was thinking of names, I would never think of Clint. You know what I mean? Anything with like an INT, like Flint, is the same. I mean, yeah, you have Flint Marko and Spider-Man, but other than that, like, I don't know, you get Flint, Michigan, but that's a city. Like, I don't know. It's just, Clint is just not a, it's just, anyway, Briggs. We're introduced here to what seems to be Briggs's first love in Nora. And the two just seem to have just a great vibe together and everything. And we're seeing very similar to like the original, Christmas Carol, where we had, of course, we saw Scrooge like originally fall in love and everything. And one thing that I do want to point out here as well, by the way, I don't know how they did it exactly, but the effect that they use to kind of de-age Ryan, I mean, and I do mean Ryan this time because I'm talking about the actor, is really impressive because I don't know if they did the same kind of thing like they did with Robert Downey Jr., but I mean, he really, in those, the, I think, what was it called? Avengers Infinity? Yeah, Infinity War. I don't know if it was the same kind of thing. Um, Obviously, they probably use some kind of CG technology or something, but I mean, he really does look like his old, like, 90, or, what he was like in like the 2000, or in the, yeah, in the 2000s, in like his 20s or 30s maybe. I'm not quite sure how old Ryan is actually. But we have this moment where essentially, um, they're all at the mall together, and Carrie explains that she's going to be a mother, and she's tired of waiting for the right man. Um, she's going to do, I guess, IVF, where the artificial insemination, and have herself get pregnant that way. And what they're going to do, and she's like, isn't that great and everything? And Clint he's an asshole, but he's honest about this, where he just tells her, he's like, no, I'm sorry, but you are not in any shape to be a mother, like, at all. Like you have no idea. And one thing I want to say is, like, we don't really know her character. I mean, we know that she was very protective and caring of him as a kid, but, like, he might be right. I will say the fact that this is kind of used as, like, the thing that sets everything up. And I mean, we have this, and we just have, of course, Carrie is, devastated, and, Owen's not dropping here this either. We also have, of course, the mother being drunk and literally having, alcohol in a bag with her as they're in a public mall. But, we just have this whole thing where this is essentially the straw that breaks the camel's back for Nora. And she says, she tells him, as she, breaks up with him then and there, she's like, I thought I could change you, and you would stop being so selfish, and all these different things. And yet, it's just, I don't know, it's odd to me that this is, like, the moment that that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, because, like, that might just be true. Again, we don't really know her character, but I do understand where she's coming from with all of this. It's one of those things where, like, it's not really something you want to say, but it's also, like, it's not really a bad moment of character. It's just, like, because here's the thing: a lot of people should not be parents. Now, myself, I don't want to be a parent. I don't really think I would be a good parent. I could technically, because I like people and everything in general, be a good dad, but I don't, want, like, the responsibility and all that stuff. But I think there are a lot of people, and I think that, like, mentality should, I think it should be normalized in general for people. You don't have to have kids. You know what I mean? You don't have to. You can have, well, not kids. You can just not have kids and be perfectly fine. And I don't know, it's just something that bugs me, that it's really pushed on, like, people in general. Though, oh, you gotta, get married and have kids and all that stuff, and, like, I don't know, it's just, yeah. Anyway, but of course, they then go further up. Present takes Briggs further into the past. Clint, his first name is Clint. Present takes Clint further into his present. No offense to anybody named Clint, by the way. It's just doesn't. Anyway, he takes him further into the present, and they see that, essentially, Briggs is working with his boss, and they develop this whole scandal for this person who was a senator, and they essentially fabricated the story of infidelity and sexual misconduct, as it says. And his boss is just not having it. And they basically have a falling out where, Clint is just so proud of the whole thing, and his boss is just, mortified, and that they would ruin her life like this over and with it all being false and everything. It's like, hey, that's the job, we got to play dirty and all these different things. To which, at this point, his boss fires him, and we have kind of a, like, Jerry Maguire moment where he goes over to I don't know how much younger, I don't know how far, this is or anything, but, he goes over to a younger Kimberly and offers her to work with him. And the reason I say that this is a Jerry Maguire moment is because if you're familiar with the film, basically Jerry, when he leaves, because he was fired as well, he takes one of the other employees with him and they start their own business together. And that's what they do. That's what he does with Kimberly. That's what Clint does with Kimberly here. On that note, by the way, just to say real quick, I did watch Jerry Maguire relatively recently. Did not care for it. I don't know if I just didn't get it or like what it was, but I just didn't. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't like it. So we have this moment where, and it's really cool because again, like it's all like a business and like an operation thing where president is communicating with the people at headquarters, being like, all right, cue up this scene, and they essentially have all these like codes for these scenes and stuff. And we have this bit where president is asking him, he's like, listen, can you this is strictly professional. Can you let me know what his hair smells like? Which I mean, if they hooked up, I feel like she probably would have smelled his hair. But regardless, at first, of course, the president's like, no, that's completely unprofessional. And then we have the HR step in, and she's like, hey, just want to let you know everything's completely above board. Go ahead and do what Past is asking here for. And he does, and he tells him cotton candy. Like, oh my god, that's so hot! All these different things. And it isn't lost on me that yes, if this was the other way around or anything like that, 100% there are many people that would be upset about the fact, like, oh, that's objectifying and all the shit. But again, I just want to clarify, say once again, it's okay for people to thirst over those that they find attractive. Just want to make that perfectly clear. This kind of thing would be funny either way. But moving on from there, we have this scene where now President brings Clint, his name is Clint, to, more recent President, and specifically the whole moment of everything with where Kimberly was showing them everything, right? And he's like, yeah, I was here. We just saw this, right? But then he also sees, right, and this is where we start to get to some, where things are really going to start twisting and changing, as it were. He brings her, or rather, President brings Clint specifically to the scene after they walked away, and Kimberly said she was a horrible person, and then she got to see President and all that stuff. And we'll get to that part in a minute, but I want to point out, I really think that the part that he should have brought her to, without playing the whole musical number again, was playing the musical number where she talks about how like she's climbed this corporate ladder and done what she could to make money and all these different things, and how her mother and grandmother would like be cleaners and stuff for these kind of people, but now she's at the top, she's actually like there and everything, and yet she feels so unsatisfied and like what she's doing is horrible. I feel like that's so much more impactful. I know that's what personally made me tear up when I was watching it. It's so much more impactful and personal than this offhand moment where like after everyone leaves, she's just like, I'm a horrible person. Because like, yes, but I mean, like, yes, like that is an impactful moment as well, but it's also like her whole number about her, why she feels so horrible doing this stuff is I feel like that would have been just a much more better thing for President to show Clint. But either way, this is where things start taking a turn, though, because as they're in that moment, Clint notices, wait a minute, she can see you. What the hell is going on here? And of course, President's immediately like, abort, and they do. But Clint starts asking some very important questions. He's like, listen, we've been going through all this stuff about me, but I don't know anything about you. And President's like, look, this isn't about me. Let's just move on with what we're supposed to deal with, because this is about you. And to be fair, of course, he's still filling in, essentially, for the Ghost of Christmas Past, right? So they're still going through his past. Although that was very recent past, it was still, of course, technically past. So yeah, it still applies, I would say. So President takes Clint to another pivotal moment in his past as he is now confronting, well, maybe confronting isn't the right word, but visiting originally with a very, very sick Carrie. And we have this moment where we get a lot, so much about their characters in this little moment here, just these couple seconds, because Clint brings a present. It's still Christmas time. Clint brings a present for Ren. Ren immediately wants to donate it to the sick kids, which of course Carrie encourages. And Clint makes the snide remark, "Oh yeah, great, glad we wrapped it." And that small little moment there, of course, shows the difference in, for one, how Carrie raised Ren, and how Ren is this very selfless, kind person, and how Clint is really a piece of shit. I mean, like, they are just driving it home. And it's really good. And we will see, I'm only going to touch on that aspect because we're actually going to see that this moment of Carrie later. We see that she has a very important thing to ask of Clint, and this just sets Clint off. Like, from this point, he runs out of the hospital, or tries to run out of the hospital, and he ends up in a more, past-ish area. Again, this is the most recent past that he's been to here. And we have this moment where, and I thought this was really interesting because I thought he was like going to be confronting himself here, which of course is the way that it's played off in the film, and kind of I think you're meant to think that as you watch this, as he's like literally face to face with himself, who asks him, "What are you so afraid of?" And yet we see that it's actually Clint talking to Owen about everything with Ren right now, where Owen says, he's like, "Look, I don't want her tanking her grades and like being a horrible person." To which Clint's like, "Look, I didn't say this was going to be easy, because this whole thing is like, we got to play hardball, we got to do it." Again, he works with like politicians and celebrities and all this stuff, so like this is the kind of shit that he does, right? But remember, all of these like sets to make these for these scenes of like, here's the past, here's this moment, here's this, here's that. There are all these different things that they are kind of loading in, essentially from headquarters. And we have a door open where Clint sees this, and he follows through and is able to make it into the actual office. And from here, he begins like just exploring everything. So President follows him and tracks him down. It's like, "Listen, I'm sorry, maybe that was too much, everything." And Clint's like, "Oh no, it's no worries. I mean, I get it. You got to go big, especially if you're trying to, redeem an unredeemable." He's found the file and he's confronting him on everything. To which they have this whole back and forth where, of course, we're really seeing kind of the duality of these kind of philosophies and these ideas as far as trying to help him and redeeming people at play, where President's like, that doesn't have to be true, like, and Clint's of course like, "Well, tell you what, man, you've been at this for 200 years. Does the world seem any better, any nicer?" Like, I accept that humanity is like selfish and just all these different things. It's like, if you want to see what humanity really is, read the comments. And I totally get where he's coming from here, because I agree to an extent. Okay, so I don't agree that the internet like has made people worse, or social media or anything like that. But I also don't think that humans are like inherently awful. I think everybody has the capacity to be extremely good or extremely bad, depending on just who they are and the choices they make in life, right? And I think most people fall somewhere in the middle, right? But you have this moment, and you have this whole thing that this film kind of introduces the concept of like, or kind of points this commentary to, as far as like people are awful, right? And here's what I think, especially in regards to the internet. I don't think that the internet, like I said, inherently made people bad or the people are bad or anything like that. I think what the internet does is, because of the anonymity that we have with it, it encourages people to be the most base version of themselves. What that means is, if they're really angry about something, they'll go off. But if they're really happy about something or whatever it is, they'll express that happiness and they'll share that kindness and that joy. There are things to be said as far as how algorithms push more vitriolic, hateful, divisive content, and rage bait, how common stuff like that is. That is all very much there and true and very much an issue. But I think that there's a level of truth to, like, look how horrible people are to each other in the comments of anything. But I also think that, yeah, no, people have the capacity, at least, to be very good to one another. And it's at this point that basically, President, he doesn't tell him this, but he's like, all right, look, you want to learn what's up? Follow me. And as Clint does, he ends up in 1800s England. And what we see here, like I said, this is like, we're really seeing like a new twist on the whole thing. As what we see is the current Ghost of Christmas Present, the one who's running the whole show, is the one and only Ebenezer Scrooge. This is why he believes so much that even somebody who is unredeemable can actually be redeemed. Because Scrooge was thought to be unredeemable. Now, of course, they didn't have the whole, office setup and everything, but, he was thought to be unredeemable. And his thought is that if he can change, anybody can. And I like that message. I mean, he was the original, he was the guy that this is all about, which is partly why Charles Dickens is credited as a writer for this, because he, of course, came up with Scrooge and everything, and, all this stuff, right? And we have this moment where Clint and Scrooge are sitting in a bar. I say Scrooge, present, but, he was Scrooge. They're sitting in a bar, or a pub, rather, and they're discussing the whole thing. And, they're really kind of analyzing the character of Scrooge. One thing is how long were you actually, how did you do it? How did you, because Clint's whole thing is like, here's the thing, right? I can fake it. I can act like I'm a better person. Anyone can, fake it for a while. How do I know you didn't? And he's like, how long did you live after that anyway? And he's like, about 2.5 weeks. And what we find as we kind of analyze and I guess deconstruct the character of Ebenezer Scrooge here is essentially that he is concerned that if those 2 weeks, if he lived past those 2.5 weeks, if he was able to live potentially much longer, that he would have in fact gone back to being a horrible person again, which is essentially Clint's perspective as well. But that will kind of be explored more later. But this is also why, of course, President is so hesitant to take his retirement, because while he wants to do things right this time, he is very concerned that he is just, there's something like inherent with him to like be a terrible person, and that if he does get a second lease on life, he's still going to be Scrooge again. He's still going to be a horrible person. And we're going to explore that more as we continue on, but we have a bit of a beat change as Clint asks him, why did that kid have such an issue with you telling him good afternoon? And essentially what President explains is that, well, back then, the way, it was basically a way of saying fuck off, right? And here's the thing, right? Obviously, saying like good afternoon or good day in such a way as these guys are doing here, yeah, that is essentially what it means. But the funny thing here is we break into this rather obscene isn't the word I'm looking for, but just very strange song and dance number, as essentially we have we have I wanted to call him Ryan again, Clint. We have Clint going around and just telling people good afternoon. Now here's the thing, right? Obviously it doesn't work out of the right context, but we have this great moment where, you know, he starts it's kind of like President is an alcoholic, where he hasn't done anything bad, he hasn't said good afternoon, he hasn't done anything like this for a long time, and then Clint gets him to break and to start saying good afternoon. And again, like, it's funny because this whole thing, like, especially to us, good afternoon is not a big deal. And even in this context, he's not saying it like at the end of a thing and telling someone to fuck off with it. He's just saying good afternoon. But we have this whole, you know, song and dance where everybody is just, to me, this is like probably the highlight, I would say, of the whole thing, where everybody is, you know, we have this whole like big song and dance number, like it's they're tap dancing and everything. We have this whole like just big ensemble, like it's just a big fun musical number, and it's a great time. And of course it's you know, him kind of you know, present, really kind of coming to terms with everything here. And it's just a great moment. It's really funny. Of course, it's a great, you know, song and dance number, very catchy, and it's just a really good, you know, character exploration with all of this as well. But with all of the hubbubaloo that they've caused, Marley shows up, and he essentially, you know, he calls out, you know, Present for, it's so weird that these people don't have like actual names. Present. I'm getting better with Clint though. But he calls out Present for like everything that he's doing, and you know, Clint, you know, steps up for him and he's like, "Look, I might not be getting with your program, but he's given it his best. Like he's been busting my balls." And Marley sends him, all of them really, into this other dimension, if you will, where he just, you know, strictly tells Present, he tells Present that he wants everything on script. You know, don't go off the book at all. And you know, because Present's whole thing is that, like, look, I was losing him. I mean, I had to do something. I had to show him that, you know, he was you know, I was an unredeemable as well. You know, he'd understand all these different things, right? And yet, no, Marley is very insistent. Got to do everything by the book. We're not playing around anymore. Like this has gone too far, effectively, right? We have this funny moment where, like, as he's leaving, and they're in this void with literally nobody else. President's just like, all right, good afternoon, and you know, of course, you know, means, you know, fuck off, right? So Marlon's like, what was that? And he's like, no, I didn't say anything. And it's like, dude, obviously, you know, and I just find that funny because it's like, it obviously couldn't be anybody else, but yeah. So we then have this moment where essentially Clint, you know, goes back to the actual president. He's at his like little holiday party and things like that. And I do want to point out, we're going to see a lot of these here. Clint himself has this like cool Santa costume, and we see a lot of kind of references in other costumes. We have this guy dressed as the Heat Miser. We're going to see some other very interesting things as we continue on here. But we have this bit where now, now that they're doing everything by the book, Present is, he's got to play by the rules, and he does the whole, like, the thing with the, wreath crown and all that, where it's like, come in and know me better, man, and, all that stuff, right? And Clint sees through this. He's like, come on, man, we're back to this stuff. He's like, come on, man, like, this is insane. Like, what are we doing here? And, we have this, Clint is just, sorry, not Clint, President is just explaining, like, listen, we have to do it this way, otherwise they're not going to let me, like, work with you at all anymore. Like, we gotta do things by the book, right? And, Briggs is like, all right, like, I thought we were past this, but all right, fine, like, let's try to, do this your way, right? And what we find is that while Clint is here, he is seeing that, like, his employees and his people that he knows in general, this is a work party, his employees do not like him. Like, they are, I mean, understandably so. And then we have, Owen is at the party as well. And he just, explains basically that, listen, I get it. I get why you're talking shit about him, but he basically learned with the upbringing that he had, that we all had, the only person you can rely on is yourself. And we see this moment where he is just being great, as far as Owen is just such, like, an outstanding, incredible, good person. He and Ren and even Carrie, like, that whole part of the family are just, like, everyone except for Clint turned out incredibly well, given the bullshit they must have suffered with their mom. But while they're at the party, Kimberly runs into them, and she's like, oh, I get it, you're the ghost of Christmas Present, you must be here to haunt Clint. And Clint is, now what's interesting is, she can see him, but she can't see Clint. And Clint immediately picks up with the way they're talking and everything, the way they're flirting. He's like, oh, you're adorable, this costume, all this stuff, right? Clint is like, oh my God, you're into her. Like, this is great, this is, okay. And at this point, Clint actually tears, so we have this bit where, Present and Kimberly are kind of talking shit, where Kimberly's like, can you believe he threw a Christmas party, a work Christmas party on actual Christmas Eve? Like, who would do that? Like, only Clint. And so now they're, like, shit talking him. And Clint's like, hey, I thought we were doing things by the book. All right, let's move on. What's next? And they go to, Present. They're seeing his ex-girlfriend Nora with her now either husband or boyfriend, whatever he is, and her kid, her family and her kids and all that. And Clint's like, look, I get it, man. This is the family I could have had. I get it. The life I could have had, whatever, right? And he points out to him, he's like, listen, I think you really want to retire. Like, I can tell you're into Kimberly and everything. Why don't you just admit that you let her see you? And he's like, I didn't. He's like, look, all right, tell you what. Let's be honest about what this dream's about. This isn't about me. This is about you. And this leads to a pretty short and funny number, as he's basically just like, you're daring to dream this life. You want to deal with this. You want to have this life, and you also haven't felt a woman's touch in so long. All this stuff, and then he cuts them short as they've entered now into the homeless shelter that Josh has been donating for, or not donating, volunteering at, where one of the people that works the place with him, they take this little picture and everything, and he's saying how he doesn't know if he wants to post it, and President's like, oh, look, he's not going to post it, he's not going to, and of course, we know as the audience, and they know that once he does, shit's going to hit the fan. But he does in fact post it, and Clint's thought on this is like, yeah, of course he did, because he thinks he's got people all figured out, and everybody's selfish and all these different things, and Ren's going to do what she needs to do, right? All these different things. And I do want to point out something. I don't believe that people are inherently selfish. We are all self-interested. The best way to get people on board with something that you believe in, for example, is to explain how it benefits them. Or, to get someone interested in anything, even like a piece of media, like a movie or something. How does it benefit them? How does it benefit you? What are you going to get out of this? What are you going to get out of this thing, this way of thinking, this movement, this whatever it might be, right? You have, and I believe that in all things, like, you have to meet people where they're at, especially if you want to change their mind in some way. But you have this whole thing where I think a lot of people get confused with that, and they think, oh, people are selfish. No, 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 not selfish, self-interested. We all care about how things are going to benefit us. Selfish is things benefiting us at the expense of other people. And it's only natural to be self-interested and to care about how something's going to benefit you. But when you have to hurt somebody else to get that benefit, that's when it becomes selfish, when it becomes a problem. But with all of that said, we have this bit where now Clint and Present are at an ice skating rink, and Ren has the opportunity to post this, and we see that she's conflicted as she's debating, posting this thing that's going to potentially destroy Josh, potentially, destroy him. And, the whole thing is basically, Present's like, look, she could make the right decision, and she posts it. And as she does, we have people making, all these, like, TikToks and comments and all these different things, like, oh, this is the real Josh, hashtag canceled, Josh is over party kind of thing, right? And Josh sees this, and rightfully, he gets extremely upset and breaks down from the whole thing. And we just see him kind of run off screen, and we'll revisit the whole Josh and Ren kind of subplot later. But now Present takes Clint back to the hospital, and we continue this scene from where we left off earlier. As I had mentioned before, this really doesn't follow the structure of what a film typically would, or excuse me, a Christmas Carol story or film adaptation typically would. We're bouncing all over the place, which is fine, and we're also like, we're having so many like kind of twists and turns. I had some hints for a bit that Present might actually be Scrooge, but I didn't really expect it, and I highly doubt most people would, coming into this thinking like, oh yeah, that's going to be Scrooge. Like that's wild, right? But we have, we're back at the hospital, and we finally get to see the conversation of what Carrie was finishing saying to Clint, which is, as we see her just so, weak and emaciated and just so like, down and everything from everything, really thinking that she is going to die, and she is absolutely, like, essentially on her deathbed here. She practically begs Clint to take Ren when she's gone. And understandably, and I think honestly rightfully so, Clint does not want to take Ren. He doesn't think that he could raise her well. He doesn't want the responsibility of raising her. And I get it. I mean, I do think that in this instance, it's really tough to say, because what he ends up doing, let me just kind of explain the scene here before I analyze it properly. So, Owen shows up, and, Clint's immediately like, hey, Carrie had something she wanted to tell you, something she wanted to ask of you, and he walks away, and he's like, I'm sorry. And on one hand, yes, this is used to show how selfish Clint is, but on the other hand, we know that Ren has grown up to be a much kinder and better person, having been effectively raised at this point by Owen rather than Clint. And I just wonder if Clint did take her on, would Ren have changed him and made him a better person, or would Clint have made her a worse person? I don't know, because I mean, like, yeah, he has a lot of money, he can offer like financial support and like buying things for her and stuff, but I mean, I don't know. You kind of look at and weigh the things, and it's like, yeah, no, it's better to have the love and the support and building proper character and all of that. And once again, I do just want to say, like, there's nothing wrong with people, not wanting to have kids or not wanting to. It is really tough, of course, to like be asked to take on somebody else's kids or pets or whatever as they're passing. But I mean, like, I kind of think that in this situation, I know it's played as this being like a horrible thing and something Clint feels guilty about, but I feel like this was the right thing for him to do, in all honesty. But with that, President is just trying to play everything by the book, right? And so it's like, all right, we're gonna, that's it. Prepare yourself for the next guy. It's a little imposing, but really all he does is point at things. You'll be all right. And which, Clint's like, wait a minute, that's it? He's like, well, yeah. I mean, my part of the hunt's over. And he's like, wait a minute, wait. Who are you to tell anybody how to live their life when you don't even know like what's up with yourself, right? And at this point, we have Marley step back in, and he's like, all right, back to the office. Let's get a move on. And Clint, tells him, he's like, you need to deal with that one question you're so afraid of. You're running from this, trying to help others, but you're basically, he doesn't say this, but he basically confronts President, and the fact that he's basically using this as a kind of a coping mechanism and an excuse to not deal with his own personal problems, and that one question he's afraid of. Of course, he asks, well, what am I so afraid of? And he's afraid that if he comes back, if he takes his retirement and has a second lease on life, is he going to be a really shitty person like he was before? And we have this bit, and I really like this moment here, where Marley tries to send Clint back to bed again and send him and Marley back, or sorry, him and Present back to the void. But this time, we actually have Present grab Clint's arm and save isn't the right word, but, help him enter essentially into the void. And we have this moment, this singing number where, essentially we have, in a way, we have Present confronting all of the horrible things he's done as a greedy businessman, all the people that he's hurt in pursuit of wealth, and how he's just worried that he can't be a better person. And essentially the whole thing is about how, like, he'll never know until he tries. So he's gotta give it a shot. And I think that's just beautiful. I do want to point out as well, because I could see this being a point of contention. There are several moments where we are seeing both when you visit Scrooge in his own time, as well as when you see Scrooge or Present in this moment, where we see black people that are essentially from 1800s England. And while I don't really think that it should be a point of contention, especially since they're background characters, I can see the worst kind of people getting upset about this. So I do just want to point out that black people did exist in the latter half of the 1800s. A Christmas Carol was published in 1843. And as such, it is very likely that around that time, that still would have, there still would have been a relative prevalence of black people existing there. So again, I don't really think it should matter, but I can definitely see people getting up in arms about that over historical accuracy and stuff like that. So, but I just want to draw attention to that. And yeah. Either way, we have this moment now where essentially President decides to take his retirement, and he and Clint both wake up in the same bed together. It is kind of odd because I thought the way that retirement was going to work, I thought it would have made sense if it was more so that he was reborn and got to like relive his life. Of course, you could argue that, well, if he was reborn, then he wouldn't have had his um, moment. He wouldn't have like been able to go through with his life continuing, knowing what he does now and all that, and that's a fair comment to make. But you know, there was a moment earlier as well where he had mentioned that he didn't exist before there was indoor plumbing and showers, so he wanted to try a shower, and so he does, and he's like, "This is amazing," which I mean, yeah, it is. Like, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like before showers and stuff. So yeah, obviously having like going from no shower at all to having a shower is like, of course that's incredible. But essentially Clint tries to help President. I guess he's just now Ebenezer at this point. Blend in, and or actually technically, and as he does keep referring to himself, he's Roberto C. Fisherman Pratt. But so Roberto, Clint kind of takes Roberto downstairs to the party and all that, and everything, and they're dealing with everything, and we have this funny little moment, like I mentioned with the costumes earlier, where Roberto runs into Elf, or he runs into somebody dressed as Buddy the Elf. And, you have a little moment, a little kind of funny moment here because, of course, Will Ferrell played the elf, or played Buddy the Elf, in the Elf movie, which, by the way, I always thought came out in 2002. Okay, it wasn't actually that far off. It came out in 2003. So, all right. So now that Roberto is no longer the Ghost of Christmas Present, his mission, as Clint encouraged him to do so, is go ask Kimberly out. See if you guys can be together, right? Go after her. Go, and he does so, and they have this kind of very cute little awkward moment where he's asking her out and everything, and he's like, "I'd like to go somewhere," and she's like, "I like somewhere. We can go anywhere, right?" And it's just cute little kind of awkward moment, right? And they have this whole moment, and they kind of get together from here, and there is this kind of funny moment as well where he had a like really bad like back scratch that he needed, and it kind of gets played up a little bit where he had Clint scratch his back originally when he first woke up, and then he has her scratch his back, and it's just a little funny thing. Not all the jokes and the moments and stuff are going to be like fantastic, but either way, we have this great moment here where we now have Clint's like, all right, good for him, hope everything goes well, and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come shows up, does his famous point, and I love this moment because we have this bit where it can only be like explained as a visual gag. He brings this one person, right, and they're like, no, not her, you. And then we have this moment. I really like this because he brings up this person who looks just like Scrooge, and he's like, "You want him?" And he's like, "No, I want you." And he's like, "Come on, man! Like that's your guy. That's the guy you go for. The guy you go after, right?" So we then cut to this scene, and I swear it's making me like tear up just watching it back for this review. But Robert and Kimberly are walking down this pier, this river walk, and we have this reprise of the song earlier that Kimberly sang, where she talked about how she was going too far, and all this was The View from Here. And this is a nice little reprise we have where basically they're both kind of talking about this view from here with each other, and that they're basically both kind of moving on with their lives and everything, and they're going to move on with their lives together. And it's just, again, I can't stress enough, like, please watch the movie. It's really good. They have a cute little moment, and they have a kiss and embrace and everything, and it's really really sweet. And moving on from there, we first have, and then we have Clint taken a little bit into the future here, where Ren is being a little class president, right? And Clint is so impressed, and everything seems to be going well until everyone starts getting these messages on their phone. And what they come to find out is Josh is dead. And it's not explicitly stated, it's more or less implied. But Josh took his own life. So essentially what happened was the damage to his reputation and the harassment that he dealt with because of the lies. Well, yes, that original post that he had made and then deleted was true, but because of the damage to his reputation and how people harassed him over this, he took his own life. And the thing with all of this is that basically Clint has now come to a point where he is ready to accept things, right? He doesn't really care. We have this moment where Clint doesn't care about the fact that he's gonna die. I mean, he's thrown into the future, and they do the whole thing where he's seeing the gravestones and there's the pointing and all that, right? And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I don't care. I see it. Like, I want to help this kid. I want to save this kid, right?" And something that gets lost in a lot of adaptations of A Christmas Carol is the simple fact that it is not the fact that Scrooge is going to die that is the issue. We're all going to die. And Scrooge is a really old man anyway. He's going to die pretty soon. This movie even pokes fun at that, right? What really causes Scrooge to change in the original Christmas Carol, as well as good adaptations of it, is how he sees other people, what his legacy is, how other people talk about him and everything and feel about him after he's gone, which is incredibly important because, again, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. It's just inevitable. But the impact you leave on people, the legacy, that is what causes you to change. That is what, because that's what matters, right? That is what matters as far as your death is. Like, how do people feel about you? How have you affected people now that you're gone? Have you made the world a better place? Have you made the world a worse place? In Scrooge's case, he made the world a worse place. So he decided from this point on he wanted to make the world better. And Clint is in a very similar situation here. Now, I really like that they did that. And again, that they have the whole thing where he's like, "Yeah, dude, I get it. I don't care." Like, and we have this moment where basically past and future blame him for making now Robert, I want to call him like Ebenezer, present Robert, making Robert quit, to which he kind of stands up for him. He's like, "No, he did that on his own, and I'm proud of him for that," right? But we have this whole bit. We have this really funny moment where basically Clint is brought back to the real present, like the real world. And as he's here, he's immediately like, I gotta like stop that message from going out. I gotta stop, because the thing is, the message that was sent, that wasn't like, it was the present, but it wasn't like that present didn't happen yet, if that makes sense. When we saw Ren send out that message, post the video. So what we're seeing here is essentially Clint's trying to get to the ice rink and stop her from sending that. And we have this funny moment here where he meets up with Robert now, and they have this moment in the elevator where they're talking, and basically Robert can't remember Tiny Tim's name, and because Clint's kind of like, this is like my Tiny Tim, and he's like, no, his name wasn't Tiny Tim. It was like all these different, and he's come up with all these other different names, and it's a funny little moment. But and as Clint finally makes it to the ice rink, it seems like it's too late. And Kimberly has this little moment with Clint where she explains, she's like, oh, I told her that her choices make her who she are, and so do mine. And she has this little song number, and we have this like funny moment where she's basically telling him that she quits, and Clint's like, listen, you're killing it right now, like you're doing great, but I really need to make sure that Ren does the right thing here. And she tells him, she's like, I didn't post it, like I really hope you're not mad. He's like, no, I'm not mad at all, like that's great, I'm so glad you didn't post it. And of course everyone's confused. They're like, what has happened here? And he's basically just trying to explain, like, he's changing, right? He's gonna try and be a better person from here. And from this point, I'm kidding, that's what we would expect to happen in A Christmas Carol story. But again, this is a very different, so many twists and turns are happening here, and I love it, because we don't have that generic end that we normally do. Instead, what we have is where he tells his brother he loves him, and which is great, and Robert now is so thrilled. He's like, oh, you're gonna love it, like all the lights are gonna come on and like all these different things, and everyone's gonna come out and like congratulate you for having changed. He's like, why isn't anything happening? And Clint's just like, because I haven't changed. I'm gonna go back to work and keep doing what I do. Maybe I'll feel bad for a bit, but then I'll rationalize it. It's kind of what I do. And again, like, I think this is really good because it really does kind of interrogate that concept of like, okay, so somebody has like said that they've changed, so to speak, right? And yet, does that mean that they actually have, And keep that in mind, because it's going to be very important in a moment here. This whole thing just destroys Robert. He leaves, and he decides to just let an oncoming bus take him, as Clint jumps in the way and pushes him at the last second. And here, the bus stops, and now all of the people show up, just like Robert now was expecting them to. And we have this really great moment where essentially what they're talking about is how this incredible change, it to become a better person, it's not this like one night and you're all of a sudden an amazing person, but rather you can try each day to be a better person than you were the day before. And I think that's just such an incredible message. I mean, look, yes, we have a wonderful little, dance number, the whole ensemble cast, it's great, we have everything. It's a musical. But apart from that, I mean, I really love the message here, because everybody thinks about change and all of these incredible things, just, oh, I've like changed and never going to make a mistake again. And then you have other people who think on the extreme of they expect somebody to change, or they think like, well, change isn't real, change isn't lasting, people don't change. But the reality is, we change little by little each day, right? And from this point, I'm going to say this is an incredibly good message, and I would say that is ultimately the message of the film. But from this point, we are going to have a spoiler, so if you do want to watch this without being spoiled, then by all means, I'll have the timestamp for you to skip to for my kind of wrap up on the whole thing. But yeah, with that in mind, let's get into the spoiler section, if you will. So what we have is basically, well, not basically. The song ends, we have this little number end, right? And Clint's body gets hit and he goes flying into a truck and he dies. Meanwhile, essentially Clint's spirit is kind of watching and everything, and he's like, hey, like, what's going on? Get up, like, kind of thing, right? And of course, that's not going to happen. As and I guess I should say before the hit, before he was hit by the bus, you had a little kind of payoff to the Tiny Tim joke where Robert is like, "Oh, it was Tiny Tim," and he's like, "Yeah, thank you," and then he gets hit. But from this point on, basically, Marley is still there, and he explains that, look, your sacrifice wouldn't have meant anything if it didn't have consequences. I'm very conflicted on this because on one hand, I would have liked to see him continue living life and being a better person, and we got to kind of see a little bit of that process play out after all of this. But I think the way that they handled this is still really good because so Clint is given the chance to go into what we can assume is heaven, some kind of happy afterlife of some sort, with his sister. And we have this beautiful moment where they reunite before he leaves her hand, and he runs back and he's like, "Look, I got an idea, a little bit out of left field, but hear me out." And we cut to seeing Clint now being the new Ghost of Christmas Present. And he's running the whole thing, and he's basically making things even better. They're expanding more, they're incorporating more. What do you call it? Like, more holidays, all these different things. We see that Clint and I guess she doesn't really have like an actual name, so just again, past are in a committed relationship here together. She makes a comment about how she hopes that she's home tonight, or he's home and everything, right? And all these different things, and we're just seeing all of this greatness, and we also see that I guess it must have been that the ghosts do have the ability to allow people to see them, because we see that Clint shows up as, Ghost of Christmas Present. He shows up to now Kimberly and Roberto's house. And not only do they see him, but their kids see him too. So we have a whole proper wrap up here as Clint is, asking Roberto for assistance with this new perp that they're, trying to, figure out how they can help and everything. And basically, and we have this little one-off line where he's like, "Oh, did you see, Rennie got into Stanford, on all these different things." And so we see, of course, some time has passed because she was in elementary school and we saw her and all that. Now she's in college. So, we're seeing that like people are continuing their lives and living them and enjoying them, and it's all good, and all that stuff, and it's sweet. It's a good time. And we have this sweet little moment where they find Roberto finds and points out that there was a point where this woman that they're trying to change now was in love in her early 20s, and so that's how they're going to try and reach her and everything, right? And then we have this like sweet little reprise where we go through and we see the characters, and we see everyone like just having fun and dancing, and of course as the credits roll and everything, and we I love this moment where like we really do have just like all the characters, including like there was this character that was set on fire, or it was as a joke, but they were like set on fire when they were in like Scrooge's world, as it were. or Scrooge's time, and we just see them here dancing like in the thing. It's great, and yeah, no, it's just it's great. Oh, we also see this moment where, as I had mentioned, um, you know, Future was played the body by Lauren G. Woods, and Tracy Morgan was the voice, and we actually get to see both of them with their masks off, just kind of dancing and being silly, and it's just a good. I mean, this whole moment is just it's such a just sweet, nice, feel good wrap up thing where we're seeing everybody just singing and dancing and just having a great time. We even have Jimmy Fallon dancing because he was in a cameo earlier. We have all the people just like we have like the young Carrie, the kid that played the young Carrie, everyone here just like, it's just a fun little like kind of, hey, none of it matters, like where everybody's having fun. And we even have this moment where, and I really like this because they even like show like the crew members, you got the camera people, well, actually it ends on a shot of the camera person, which is really cool. But you get to see like just so much of the staff and crew, which are so often unappreciated in these kind of things. And it's just such a fun, beautiful moment. And then we have the rest of the song that Roberto now was singing earlier, where it was it's called Ripple, and we have this just beautiful moment where everybody's dancing in the office, very similar to the Christmas morning song, except now we have like they're like splashing around in water as they dance. It's all in black and white too, which is I'm a bit iffy on, but it's still kind of nice. And it's just such a good. I mean, the song, the message, the everything about this, like this is a very good rendition and modern take and everything on A Christmas Carol. And I love it. I mean, this film was just absolutely incredible. It was the twists and turns, the fact that Ghost of Christmas Present was actually Ebenezer Scrooge himself, the social commentary they did on things like the nature of people, and the thing where you have these like greedy corporations preying on people's either desire to be better or to keep tradition or whatever it might be, and all this bullshit, where how it's really just used to pit you against each other and to sell a product and all these different things. And just like, and so much of this, and again, that message of how like, and I really like that Do a Little Good as well, that song, and that message about how like you can just do small good things like each day and try to be a better person than you were yesterday. You change, and becoming better does not have to just be this like such a drastic thing like so many of us think that it would be. And I mean, I really love the original A Christmas Carol, of course by Charles Dickens, and I really love my favorite adaptation to this day of that story is the Disney's, I think, 2009 A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey. But this as like a continuation and modernized version of A Christmas Carol is just incredible. I mean, the even like the kind of meta moments of like, wait a minute, I'm in A Christmas Carol, like what are we doing here? Like all these different things. So much of this that like you as an audience would think looking at this is just an incredible film. And again, it's one of those classic things where it's like, yes, it's raunchy and it has a lot of like, moments where wouldn't be comfortable, like wouldn't like considering this like a family Christmas movie or anything like that. But there are also plenty of moments where like, I mean, it has so much heart and it's so beautiful, and it's a really good film. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend this. If you're looking for a new take on A Christmas Carol, or you're looking for just a new Christmas movie in general. I say new, I mean, it came out 2 years ago, but like, who cares? Just incredibly well done, incredible message, incredible production value, casting, everything just really good, really good. I can't express enough. This is an incredibly good film, and great to watch this time of year. So, with all that said, as always, these are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. And if not, hope you find something to do, like happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Yule, whatever it is. I hope you enjoy. Have a good time with your loved ones. Later, guys. Peace and love.